everybody. The Flash is back from hiatus. This is episode 12, Death Rises. And it's your boy Icon with some DC TV. Here, this is actually different from a lot of previous seasons of The Flash because people are legitimately dying. Like, we are losing people on this show due to Deathstorm. But in our last episode before the break, Deathstorm, Ronnie had turned into Deathstorm and he appeared in the form of death, and then, Kaitlyn was screaming or whatever. So it takes place when that starts. And then Deathstorm, he walks up to Kaitlyn and he's like, "Now you're mine." And then he grabs her by the shoulders. And we all assumed at that point that he was going to burn her alive or maybe kill her. The Flash shows up and then he throws some lightning at Deathstorm and it doesn't work. And then after that, Deathstorm is like, "Oh, it's not enough." And then, he takes off, and he runs away. So then they're talking to Kaitlyn. And then, that's when Kaitlyn's just like, she feels okay and that he didn't burn her or he didn't hurt her. And then she was just like, she apologized to Barry because she was like, "Oh, that's not Ronnie." She's like, "I thought it was Ronnie and Barry. I didn't listen." And he was like, "You damn right you didn't listen." But then she said that, it's not. And then this is a theme that kept being brought up over and over and over again. They completely went out of their way to let us know that this is not Ronnie, it's not Ronnie, it's not Ronnie. But for some reason, he's obsessed with Kaitlyn. So then, so then she said that she said that, he was whatever vortex or space thing he was created out of. He was basically designed. He was created through Ronnie's grief. That's what she said. And then she was like, "But we have to try to find a way to track him because he said he didn't have enough power. And if he doesn't have enough power, then he's going to go around killing other people to take their essence so he can power himself up." So the Flash then comes up with an idea because Cecile had came in the room and she was saying like, "Oh my God, I can feel everyone's grief from across the room." And then that's when Barry was just like, "Well, because of Cecile's power, since Cecile has a way of, feeling people's energy, feeling people's emotions, they can use her to try to locate Deathstorm and try to find his location." So Chester does his technical mumbo jumbo. They plug Cecile up to they're always plugging Cecile up to machines on this show. They plug her up to a machine. And then when they try to amplify her power to track Deathstorm, and that's another thing. How many times does someone take over Cecile's mind? Like, Deathstorm takes over Cecile's mind and he's like, "Oh, the empath and I are one Flash and you will never find me until I want you to find me." And he was like, "I will feed." And he was like, "You're not going to get Kaitlyn." He was like, "Damn it." Like, "Kaitlyn will be mine and there's nothing you can do about it." Blah, ha, 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 ha. So, so he lets Cecile go. And then now everybody's like really on high alert because they're like, "Yo, we got to save Kaitlyn because Deathstorm's coming for Kaitlyn." Deathstorm ends up breaking into Star Labs. And when he breaks into Star Labs, he beats up Killer Frost. He snatches up Kaitlyn. Then he literally takes Kaitlyn like King Kong style. And then he runs throughout the city. Barry goes after him. He tries to chase him. Barry did this cool thing where he used the kinetic energy of Deathstorm along with his own lightning power to create lightning platforms for him to step on so he can try to chase him up into the sky. But right before he caught Deathstorm, Deathstorm had disappeared into a pocket dimension. And when he disappeared, that's when Barry knew how he was traveling around and how he was going from point A to point B. Because he said that Barry told Chester that the last time he saw a pocket dimension or a singularity like that was when Chester first came on the show, when Chester had the black hole power, when Barry had to go into the black hole to save Chester. So now they know how Deathstorm's getting in and out of places, like how he's doing it. So then Chester did his, did his technical mumbo jumbo, and he came up with a way in order to, in order to track him. Now, they found Deathstorm at some local theme park outside of the city. And then when Barry ran down there to go stop him, Deathstorm had Kaitlyn in hand, and he told Kaitlyn, he was like, "You're going to be my bride, and it took me years to find you, and this, that, and the third, but yet this isn't Ronnie." And then, he's like, "I need more power in order to transform you, into the person that you need to be." So then, there are other people there were like regular human beings who were at the theme park that were suffering grief that he found out about. He used his power to kill them, and then he sucked up their grief, and then he powered himself up, and then he tried to use that power to infuse himself and diffuse that power into Kaitlyn. And then by the time Barry got there, 4 people were dead. Again, this is the one season of The Flash where because in superhero lore, the whole job is protect the public. We have to protect the people, protect the people. They're doing a very horrible job this season of protecting the public. The public is dying. So Barry shows up, and then he sees Kaitlyn there, but there's no Deathstorm. So he picks up Kaitlyn, they bring Kaitlyn back to Star Labs, and then that's when Kaitlyn said he let me go because he said I wasn't ready. He said that, for all the power that he had to try to transform me, it wasn't enough, and he said I'm not ready to be his bride yet. And at that moment, I did not believe Kaitlyn because he like Ronnie, I'm calling him Ronnie, damn it. Ronnie held on to her for so long. I refuse to believe that his influence didn't already corrupt her mind in some way, shape, or form, because she was way too calm about what he tried to do to her. And she was just like, oh, like he did something to me where like my body is stronger and I'm more alert and this, that, third. She seemed too happy about that. She didn't seem like devastated at all. Like I question whether or not Deathstorm actually like got into her head and Kaitlyn's already been transformed. She's just not 100% yet. So, but then after that, they just told her like, yo, just get some rest and we'll check on you in a few. So then they go talk to Chester again. And Chester said that because of the pocket dimension thing and because Chester can track the pocket dimension, like particles or aura, like there was a lot of science mumbo jumbo that came out of this. But at the end of the day, they basically said if they can take the machine that they used on Chester and if they can reverse it for cold fusion and they can use that machine to power up Killer Frost and basically Deathstorm, he's pure fire energy, whatever. They can basically turn Killer Frost into a gigantic fire extinguisher, and they can use Killer Frost to put Firestorm out, because if they use the machine on Killer Frost, she'll then be powerful enough to extinguish him. And that's how they're going to basically kill him before he gets to Kaitlyn. But I feel like when they build that machine and Killer Frost tries to extinguish Deathstorm, that's when Kaitlyn's going to show up and blast Killer Frost, because again, I feel like Caitlyn's mind has been turned. But more on that later. So then, so then after that, so that was the plan, and like the plan's in full effect, and now we're gonna see what happens after Chester builds this machine. Now in Iris news, Iris, she's still dealing with the time sickness, and as she's dealing with the time sickness, Dion eventually shows up, and then when Dion shows up, he said that the time sickness is now affecting him, and it was messing with his powers. That's why it took him so long to get to Iris. But then he said, because he is the Steel Force and he can see the past, present, and future, he said he's able to see every single person's future on the planet except for Iris's. He said Iris is the only one whose future he can't see. And even Iris herself, she said that when she spent time in the Steel Force, she was able to see her past and her present, but she couldn't see her future as well. And now Iris is freaking out because she's like, oh, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to die. I don't have a future. And then Sue tried to calm her down, and she was like, yes, you do have a future. And my whole thing is, if Iris is worried about her future, where are her children? Like, when is Bart and Nora going to come back from the future to the present and say, hey, mom, it's okay? Like, this is the perfect time for the kids to show up now to remind this woman that she got a damn future. So anyway, Dion basically said that, listen, if Iris blinks out of existence, he'll need to find her. So he put like some Still Force tracking device in her body that allowed him to track her wherever she may go. But he also told her it's also up to you to anchor yourself into the present. And then Dion started getting like a stomach ache or whatever, then he disappeared. So now Dion's gone because he's been completely affected by the time sickness. So now Iris, which was kind of weird, because if Dion was going to disappear, if Dion's presumed as like dead now, what was the point of putting the tracker in Iris unless having that Still Force power within her is going to do something? I feel like at the end of the day, Iris is going to be responsible for taking down Deathstorm because of her time power. But then after Dion died, Iris started like wigging out. Iris started like fading in and out of existence. And then Sue gave her the rah-rah speech, like, think about your future, think about your children, think about your family and your husband and blah, blah, blah. And she was able to bring herself back. So she's kind of got a stance on it. I think it'll be awesome if in the season finale, if Booster Gold, who was on Legends of Tomorrow, if he comes back and gives Iris the time suit to stabilize her, that would be pretty dope. But we'll see what happens with the Iris storyline. And then in the end, when her and Sue were asleep on the couch, Iris started hearing voices. She started feeling some kind of way. And then when Iris, looked over at the window, she saw Eddie. So now Iris is creating people from her past and bringing them to the present. Whether or not Eddie's real, that remains to be seen. But, like the actor that plays Eddie Thong, he will be back in the next episode, and it'll be cool to see him as well. So that was it. And thank you for tuning in. So my thoughts on this, and this is me personally. The way that the show is going, and the way that everybody's behaving, with the whole thing with Killer Frost trying to be the fire extinguisher for Katie basically being the bride of Deathstorm. And, and even with Joe, the way the whole thing with Joe is going, because he's not the chief of police, but he's still working with the chief of police, and him getting replaced and everything. One of three characters will not survive this season. Killer Frost, Kaitlyn, and Joe West. One of them will not make it out of this season alive. because they are very adamant about making death a part of this season. And Jesse L. Martin, that plays Joe West, he got an acting job on another show, so he's going to leave the show anyway. Either Joe's not going to make it because of that, like they're going to kill off his character. Kaitlyn is going to die because of she's going to die taking down Deathstorm once and for all. Or Killer Frost is going to die sacrificing herself for Katie. Because the whole thing with Daniel Panabaker playing these double roles, I think one of them has to go. Either that or my other prediction, because of the firepower that Deathstorm is trying to infuse in Kaitlyn. Once they defeat Deathstorm, I feel like Kaitlyn will still have firepower, and then both Kaitlyn and Killer Frost, because Kaitlyn will have firepower, Killer Frost will have ice power, and they're going to be the DC comic book duo known as Fire and Ice, which will be a little disappointing because Fire was supposed to be Brazilian. But I think they might go the Fire and Ice route, because this whole thing about infusing Katie with firepower, like, I think is kind of weird as well. You know, but Deathstorm's not done yet, because now in the next episode, he's going to attack people's grief. He already did it with Allegra. Like, he attacked her grief with her cousin, so he's going after people's grief in the next episode because he has to get all the power that he can to power up to transform Kaitlyn. But like I said, either Kaitlyn and Killer Frost will become Fire and Ice at the end of the season, and Joe will die, or between Kaitlyn and Killer Frost, one of them is going to die trying to save the other. So that's how the episode is going to end. And like I said, thank you for tuning in. Hit me up on Twitter and Instagram. Share your thoughts down below. What do you think about Deathstorm and The Flash? Are you happy to see Ronnie back? What do you think about my predictions as far as like someone not making it? Like I said, there is way too much death on this show. Somebody is not making it out of this season alive. And I still feel like Iris is going to come in and swoop in at the end and save the day. But share your thoughts and we will talk about it. Hit me up on Twitter and Instagram, always on YouTube, where you can share your questions, comments, and or concerns about The Flash. Right now, we got Superman and Lois on the channel. We got Young Justice on the channel. We got Naomi coming up, and we still got Moon Knight for all you Marvel fans. So thanks for tuning in, guys. So until next week, as death continues to rise in Central City, take care, and about this.